a North Carolina native. Any North Carolina natives in the house? Some. Okay. All right. Where'd you grow up? Raleigh. All right. Cary.
Fayetteville.
Finally.
There you go.
I grew up in Fayetteville.
All right.
All right. All right. Every time I do that little thing, nobody is ever from Fayetteville. So thank you. I grew up in Fayetteville, and as a kid, I had dreams of being a basketball player. I thought I was going to be about 6'9", 6'10", but I stopped growing at 15. And let's just say my basketball dreams didn't work out. And I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life. There was a high school guidance counselor who steered me towards engineering. He got me into an engineering camp at NC State over the summer. And I went there and I was hooked on engineering. So then I decided to study electrical engineering and go to NC State. Back then, you could work your way through college. It was pretty cheap back then. It was about $4,000. That would take care of everything. Your room and board, your food, your tuition, your books. And so I worked any odd job that you would hire somebody in college to do. I was a shoe salesman. I was an usher. I was a telemarketer. Yes, I called people up and interrupted them in the middle of their dinner and asked them for money. I worked construction. I was a janitor. And then in 1995, I got an opportunity to join IBM as a co-op student. And so I would do a semester of school, a semester of work, a semester of school, semester of work, and I was a level 1 technical support call taker. And just to put it in perspective, all my jobs before that point, they paid, anybody want to guess what minimum wage was in the early 90s? $4. $4.25 an hour to be precise. So I got a job with IBM, and I'll never forget, I got the physical letter with the offer in the mail, and it said $13.50 an hour. And I was like, I'm the richest person on the planet. And as a result, I was able to buy beer, and that's when I developed my love of whiskey. So any whiskey drinkers here? No, because you all are too into school, right? You wouldn't dare drink. That's when I developed my love of whiskey and bourbon, and started working at IBM. And when I graduated college, I went right back to IBM. I didn't want to be a level 1 call taker anymore. I got tired of people cursing you out all the time. But it did teach me some good skills, how to deal with clients, how to de-escalate situations, how to think fast on my feet. And so it gave me a head start going into my career. I started my career as an electrical engineer. I was developing desktop computers for IBM's PC company. And I did that for about 6 years. I worked in the lab and I loved it. I worked around a bunch of really, really smart engineers. And so I was able to learn a ton. I was like a little brother to all the senior engineers, and they taught me everything. So quickly, after a few years in the company, I became one of our lead engineers. And a few years later, I went into management, and I started managing all of our testing for PCs and our quality assurance for PCs. And I loved it. And I said, okay, I want this career to be technical and leadership, and I want to manage people. So from there, I went into software development. I did not study computer science, and I was not a good programmer. All the computer scientists in the room, I admire you. I admire the way your brain works. But I wish I had. I studied electrical engineering, and I wish I had double majored. Because I went into software development and I had to really, really learn a lot. But it was fun, it was exciting. I think it was probably one of the most intellectually stimulating roles I had. And then, anybody remember, let's see, I don't want to date myself. 2008, how old would most of this room have been around 2008? 4? Okay, all right, this story isn't gonna work. Let's just say, everybody now has a phone, right? You got a phone. You know what kind of battery it has? Anybody? No? A lithium-ion battery. lithium-ion battery technology started to really progress in the mid-2000s. Before then, everything had to be plugged in. You wanted to use something, you could use a laptop off of the plug for maybe 30 minutes. But battery technology started to progress, and as a result, we started having a lot of safety problems in the industry. So we would get explosions, fires. Anybody been on a plane? Traveled on an airplane? Okay. You hear them make the announcement like you can't carry a spare lithium-ion battery on the plane? That's when that started, right? And it was a big threat to our business, and I was asked to go figure out Lenovo's battery technology strategy and start a battery technology organization. Real hard job. We had recalls, we had lawsuits, we had intellectual property issues. That's when I started developing my first patents. I figured out how to make the batteries not explode. Real fun job, real hard job, grew me a lot. And then I went back to software development, this time to lead all of Lenovo's software development. Lenovo bought the PC company from IBM in 2005, and I went with that sale. As I was doing that and leading the whole organization, I really loved it. And I said I wanted to grow my leadership skills. And I knew if I wanted to lead and have more of an impact on people, that I couldn't just be in technical areas. I had to go get some business acumen. So I actually left Lenovo, went back to IBM, joined IBM's supply chain team, and led IBM's supply chain strategy. So I got thrown into the deep end of business, and it was a great learning experience. So I did that for a while, and then I went out and supported the sales team. Really want to learn about business and learn how people close deals. That was really fun. I did that for a while, and then I got into the world of mergers and acquisitions. I led the integration of two companies whenever we would acquire or divest. And then also around that time, I got into the world of analytics. And I had the opportunity to lead our supply chain analytics team. And I've been in this world of data and analytics and AI ever since. That was right around 2014. How old were you in 2014? 8? Oh, gosh. Wow. All right. They make you feel old, Marissa. Yeah. Every time I tell a story, she always goes, I wasn't even born yet. And so now you can, they can say that to you when you tell your stories. But anyway, I led IBM supply chain analytics, and then we started getting real serious about our AI capabilities. A few years prior to that, we had one of our AI projects to play Jeopardy and win back in 2011. And so we were getting serious about how do we use AI inside of IBM to make us better. And I took an effort to embed AI across the company. We called it cognitive computing back then. Was probably a bad brand marketing decision because everybody was like, what does that mean, cognitive computing? Eventually we changed it to AI. But that was fun. So I did that for a while, but one of the biggest obstacles in deploying AI is what? Anybody guess? Training data. Data in general, right? And especially at a big enterprise or big institution like University of Chapel Hill or IBM. Data is always what gets in your way. So we started a chief data office. I went to go help that get started up. And I was in the world of organizing and building a data platform and building out data standards, understanding how we were going to deal with privacy regulation that was just starting. The European Union's global data privacy regulation started around 2018. So I got into that world. How do we do data governance? And I did that for about 5 years. Right around that same time, 2018 was a pivotal year for me. I took that role in the chief data office. I got married. Yes, I got married late in life. I finally found the one. And she was also an IBMer too. And I became IBM's local leader for our RTP site and for the state of North Carolina. So I did that for 5 years. And then I had the opportunity to take a role being the chief analytics officer for IBM back in 2023. And I loved it. and that's the job I hold right now, at least for another week, because next week I will be going to pursue a passion of mine, which is affordable education. And I'm going to go to Wake Tech Community College and lead their business and IT program and lead their RTP campus. So that's a little bit about my background. Hopefully that's sufficient. Personal life, I think I mentioned I'm married. I have a wonderful wife. I call her my better 0.8 because she's so much better than my better half. I like to play poker. You would have guessed it, an analytics guy loves to play poker. And I love movies and TV shows, and anytime I'm on a plane, you'll catch me watching Netflix. I have a rule, I don't work on a plane anymore. Every time I get on a plane, I just watch shows, because I'm like, that's the only place I can not be bothered or interrupted. Outside of that, I think I've covered pretty much everything. All right.
Thank you so much for that. So you've had a very interesting career where you've taken on various roles. Can you tell us a piece of advice that you have for a student in our position who maybe is not sure which career they want to follow in the future?
I would say I got lucky. I got introduced to engineering and I loved it. If you are in a role or in a field and your mind doesn't continuously go about it, like your mind is not continuously thinking about it, you're not spending cycles when you have downtime thinking about it, you're in the wrong field. That's what I'll tell you, right? Like, you have to have some amount of passion coupled with an intellectual curiosity, right? If it is just a job or if it's just work and you're just doing it, it's hard to be at your best. If you're not at your best, you're not going to perform at the highest level. If you don't perform at the highest level, you don't get new opportunities, you don't grow. It's a vicious cycle. So, what I would say is, if you whatever field you go into, it's gotta intellectually intrigue you. I thought I loved engineering. And when I got into software development, man, my mind just did not stop thinking about code. Like, I just, at night, in the middle of the night, I'll be thinking about it. Likewise, when I was presented with I didn't really have a choice to take the battery technology role. They were like, Tim, you got to do this for us. So sometimes you don't get a choice. But once I got into it, I was thinking about it all the time. Like, I was thinking about, like, how can we solve these problems? How do we figure it out? And that just propels you into a high performance mindset. When you have a high performance mindset, you're probably going to succeed at anything you do. So that would be my suggestion.
That was an awesome answer. So clearly passion is very important, but it also sounds like you have a passion for many different fields. How would you say you figure out how to make your skills transfer from one field to another?
That's interesting, because if you would have asked me when I was a student sitting in a room like this, I thought I would have been an engineer in the lab forever, and I would have never left. And when I first joined IBM as an engineer and in the lab, I was like, this is my favorite place ever. I love it, right? And so as I started to be thrust into new opportunities, I realized I liked more than just engineering. So I liked engineering, but I also liked working with people and helping people grow and those types of things. And so I discovered new things that I liked. And you might say, well, like, some of the things you worked on, they're not very related. But I will tell you this. One, I think anybody who sits in an institution like this, the biggest thing you get out of here is learning how to learn, right? You'll hear it, I'm sure, when your graduation, whoever your graduation speaker will be, they'll probably say something about be a lifelong learner. It's true. If you have a passion for learning, then everything you learn, it sort of builds on top of each other, right? So it's just like in school, you learn, I'm gonna make it up, what do you learn? algebra first, and then you learn calculus, and then you can move on and to differential equations, et cetera. Same thing. So I learned when I was doing those odd jobs how to be professional, how to show up, how to communicate. When I was being an engineer, I learned how to solve hard problems and how to apply that mindset to real world problems and how to think outside of the box of just what you were taught, and how to be innovative in my thinking. And so to me, those are the building blocks, right? Because wherever I went, I just looked at it as, okay, this is a problem, and I'm an engineer and I solve problems. So when I went into the supply chain, it was a little intimidating because I was like, I don't know anything about supply chain, and how am I supposed to lead, $100 billion company's supply chain strategy? But I said, you know what? It's a series of problems. So let me think about it that way. Then let me go about learning and diagnosing the problem and drawing on other people. So really, that engineering mindset, which I say engineering, but I say just being a student learning a discipline, gives you a mindset of like, how do I go figure things out? That's number one. And then two, you have to be willing to be a little bit uncomfortable, which is not something I was good at early on, but I got better at it. Because when you change disciplines, oftentimes you go from being one of the most knowledgeable people to one of the least knowledgeable people, and that's uncomfortable. And for me, early on, it would be uncomfortable. But I had to realize, hey, doesn't mean I'm not smart. It just means I haven't spent the time studying and working and gaining the experience that a lot of other senior people have. And so with that, I'm like, I can go learn anything, right? I mean, my view is if today I had to come back in the classroom, I probably couldn't excel in quantum physics, but I could learn most subjects.
That's really amazing advice for how to set a foundation. A lot of people here also notice that you are a master at climbing up the corporate chain. And I think a lot of people here are also interested in doing the same. Can you give us your best piece of advice for working your way up the corporate ladder and getting promoted at the same company?
I gave you one piece of advice, which was make sure you were doing something that piques your intellectual curiosity, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to have a high performance mindset, and it's hard to do that when you're not into it mentally. And then on top of that, in a big company, I always tell people, everybody's smart, everybody's good, everybody, has a degree or whatever it is, or credentials or skills. So, having a high performance mindset, that's just sort of like, that's the minimum. Any poker players in the house? Anybody? Yeah, so that's like jacks or better, right? Like, that's just the minimum to start. But you have to have that, and you have to bring that to every interaction that you have at whatever you're doing. My view is, I don't care who's looking, I don't care what the situation is, I want to show up and bring my best self forward in any situation. And a lot of people don't do that. You probably work with some people on your project team. They show up when you got to do the presentation, but they didn't do a lot of work otherwise, and they're not into it, right? So just having this high performance mindset is one. I think the second thing is being somebody who has really clear vision, right? 20/20 vision. And when I say that, what I mean is you have to be able to look at yourself and be self-critical. You have to say, I'm good at these things, I'm not good at these things, I have these gaps, so that you can know what you're working on. You have to be able to look and scan your industry to see what other people are doing. You can't just always be heads down. You have to think about what the competition is doing, what are other people doing. You have to look around and figure out who's best, what does best look like versus, what does this person next to me look like, right? One of the things I think plagued me and a lot of people that I started IBM with, we were all obsessed with one another, right? And we weren't obsessed with who's the best. So just having this vision and being willing to be honest with yourself and what you're seeing out there, whether it's about yourself, whether it's about an industry, helps you sort of separate yourself from other people. And then last but not least, probably one of the biggest things is relationships. You have to be willing to build relationships. I tell everybody, when I mentor new executives, I tell them, look, everybody is smart. Everybody works hard. Everybody's got some great accomplishments. That's not going to carry you any further. But your relationships coupled with that will carry you. And you have to invest time in building relationships. And you have to be somebody that views every interaction as a possible relationship, and not so much something that a relationship can do for you, but something maybe you can do for the relationship. For example, you reached out to me out of the blue, and it was done in such a professional manner. I was like, let me engage and see how I can help you, right? But if you carry that mindset with you, I think that is the recipe for success, regardless of your industry, right? One of the things I looked at around mid-career was I just started looking at really, really highly successful people, like people that I consider wildly successful. And they all had those three things: high performance mindset, great vision, great relationships.
That is an excellent answer. Speaking of relationships, a lot of people here are looking to secure internships or jobs in the coming months, and sometimes networking can feel a little bit like it lacks meaningfulness, we'll say. So how do you come across as somebody who wants to build genuine relationships as opposed to somebody who is a user or is a
Look, I think you can build relationships and be your authentic self. And to your point, when you're not being your authentic self, it does come across as annoying, right? I think also too, anybody ever worked in sales? Whether it's retail or anything like that? Yeah, okay. So what kind of sales did you work in?
I did like freelance sales work for like a game studio. So basically just connected the studio with companies with investors that were looking to, put their money into game development.
Yep. And did everybody you interacted with, did they all buy? No.
Not even half.
Right. And that's the way what'd you say, not even half? Yeah. That's the way I look at it, right? Like, you have to approach everything with a thought of this person, at some point, we can really help each other. We can be, beyond just a relationship, we could be good friends. And then it's just not going to happen for everyone, right? But if you bring that type of energy, I'm putting into it something, I think it works out at a high enough rate to where it starts to pay you back dividends. And, just like sales, some people you're not going to build that chemistry with, and you're not going to, build a great relationship with. That's okay. But if you treat every interaction with that mindset, then you're going to win more than you lose, right? It's just like if in sales, I could have the best product. I could be selling this water. And if I just went in and was like, hey, you want some water? This water is, it's got some stuff in it, but you want it?
Not really.
Right. But hey, this water is great. It's good for you. It's going to hydrate you. It's going to make sure you don't get hungover tonight. Have some water.
Thank you.
Hey, there you go. That's the way I feel like just putting yourself in a mindset that I am going to approach an interaction almost like it's an investment. We did this exercise, and I know I'm taking a long-winded answer, but this one's good. We did this exercise at IBM when I was in one of the senior executive classes. And I think I want to do it here. So I want to ask everybody to pair up. Find a partner. All right, everybody. You can, wherever you're at, but just make sure it's groups of two. And the exercise we're going to do is I want you to pretend that you are at San Francisco and you're at a conference, a technology conference out in Silicon Valley. And you are introducing yourself to your partner in your group of two. So y'all just introduce yourselves. Well, watch this. Watch this. Okay, introduced. We're gonna call it. Everybody's introduced. All right? You introduce each other, right? All right, here's the situation now. You are going to that same conference and you're gonna meet your partner, but this time, this is your partner that you grew up with all the way through high school, but you went to universities in different parts of the globe, and this is your first time seeing them since high school graduation. Go.
When you guys do the exercise, is this also counted? That's amazing.
All right, we're done. Did you notice the energy level that you had on the second one compared to the first one? The first one you were like, how are you? I'm Tim Humphrey with IBM. And the second time you're like, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Blah, blah, blah. And the only thing that was different was the story you told yourself. Right? So going back to your question about building relationships and network, it's the story you tell yourself. That's what's going to control the energy you bring to an engagement. Right? If I told myself, man, I had a long day at work and Izzy wants me to come talk to some students, I would show up and probably not have good energy. But I told myself, man, what a great way to end off a long day at work is come over to Chapel Hill and talk to some of the people that are going to be leading us into the future, great minds. And so I come in with energy, right? So it's the same thing with relationships, right? Like you got to bring your energy into it. And sometimes you have to tell yourself the story that gets your energy level up. All right, long answer to that question, so we'll keep moving.
What a very, very good answer to that question. That was awesome. So, building off on relationships. Some people were wondering, because your position is not exactly the same as ours right now, how does your authority influence your ability to persuade others?
I will say this, and I have two people on my team in the back, so they're probably like, what's he going to say? Look, I will say this. When you are in a leadership position, people will do what you tell them to do. I say that's no good, right? Just people doing what you tell them to do, that's no good, right? When you're the leader of the team, you're there to get the best out of the team, to drive the best outcomes for your clients, for the employees, for shareholders, for whoever your constituents are. The power of the team is a lot of different minds and a lot of different ways of thinking. So there's a lot of innovation to harness. So yes, people will just do what you tell them to do. I like to try to build teams where we figure out together what is the best possible way to proceed. And that's hard. And initially, especially when you're a new leader coming in, everybody just wants to make you happy. So sometimes it's hard to get to the best answer and the best outcome because, yeah, you're like, oh, this person is in control of signing my paycheck. But I think what what you have to do is accept that it's going to be hard and it's going to be a little bit of a journey. But then again, tell yourself the story that we're going to get to a point to where we function as a team. And I might happen to be the leader, but everybody has influence. And to do that, you have to start being very intentional in your actions. You have to do things like give people that might be a little quiet, give them the opportunity to have the floor. You have to ask people what they think. Right? A lot of times the best idea doesn't come from the most vocal person. Right? I found, especially in technology, sometimes the best ideas are coming from the quietest people because they're doing the most thinking. So I will say it does make it hard sometimes, especially when you have a new team. But then as a leader, you work on building an environment to where we all have influence. And this one back here, I call her the puppet master, right? Because she just tells me what to do. And I'm like, okay. But like on a lot of things, I know she has more expertise than I do, right? And I think as a leader, you have to understand where you have expertise. And also this concept of not only do I have expertise in this one area, do I have incremental value over my team, right? I have managed a group of programmers. I told you I wasn't the best programmer. So me sitting there trying to tell them how to architect and write the code is probably not a good use of my time. And it's probably a waste of their time, and it's probably gonna yield bad products. So I had to apply my incremental value in other areas. How do I get us to think differently about a problem? How do I motivate us when we had tight deadlines? How do I keep everybody's energy up when things are going bad? And so, when you do those types of things, you build a team to where it all sort of functions well together.
That is an amazing answer. Speaking on behalf of some people in this room who might be entering environments like those where they have to communicate with leaders, what is something young professionals think executives care about that executives absolutely do not?
Oh, wow. This is going to sound harsh, but it's probably true to an extent. So I'm really thinking about this one. That's a good one. People, oftentimes early professionals think executives care about how they feel. We don't. We don't care about how you feel. We care about the outcomes you deliver. And we care about you performing at a high level. And when you're performing at a high level, then we care about how you feel. So we generally don't care that much about you when you have very little to contribute. You're viewed as somebody who hopefully is going to grow into somebody who has a lot to contribute, who brings a lot of value. So yeah, early on, we don't care about how you feel. Once we've seen your value, then we care about how you feel because we want you to keep delivering those amazing outcomes. And that is probably a hard truth that most people wouldn't tell you. But yeah, if I inherit a team and it's got a lot of early professional people on it, I hear them sometimes. Hey, they don't care about how we feel. I'm like, you're right, we don't. We don't care about how you feel. Because generally, most people that are in leadership positions, they are servants to another constituency. So if you're part of a team, most people are thinking about how do I drive the best outcomes for a client? Not necessarily how you feel. They want the employee you want your employees to be motivated and engaged, but that's so that they can drive good outcomes.
That is a very good answer, and thank you very much for being straightforward with
Yeah.
us. So it sounds like in general, providing value happens to to do so. What soft skill do you think is most overlooked by analysts when trying to translate data into go-to-market strategies that people actually buy into?
Number one is communications. I mean, I see it all the time, and I was sort of this way too. Early days of engineering. You have to understand and know your audience. It doesn't matter how brilliant you are. You have to make what's in your mind translatable to somebody in the room, and you have to understand what level of knowledge they have about a subject. What are they trying to accomplish? And I've even seen people that you would say are brilliant communicators because they speak well, but they don't understand audience. So I think that's probably the number one thing is just your ability to communicate. And I always say it's not so much speaking well, it's knowing situation, it's knowing situation, knowing the time, understanding this person doesn't understand the depth of I spent 20 hours in a spreadsheet. Of course I know it left and right, and I'm coming into a room for 30 minutes. I've got to explain it to you. And so I need to be able to take all that information and give you enough information so that you can understand and make the decisions you need to make. That is a very difficult task for people sometimes early in their career. So I'd say number one people need to work on is communications. I would say number two is like how to negotiate. And I'm not just talking negotiating a big deal or a big agreement. I'm even talking about how to negotiate getting your idea across in your team. All right. A lot of people have great ideas or great thoughts, but they don't understand how to influence others in a group, right? And that is something that I think derails a lot of careers. And so that would probably be the second thing I'd say is just the basics of negotiation skills. How to listen, how to find the common ground, how to then allow your level of thinking to influence somebody else and get them thinking, how to, and how to play that back and forth. That's probably number two.
Yeah. This is not the first time that I've heard you talk about people who talk a lot but say very little. So what is the most corporate buzzword phrase that you simply never want to hear again?
Ooh. There's probably a long list. I don't want to hear OKR again, ever. Objective and key result. That's probably one. What else? I'd probably say there was, I'm not in that world now, but when I was in the world of supply chain, there was this concept of all the orders that we could get in a quarter had to meet a certain standard, a certain set of checklist of things so that we could claim revenue from a financial perspective, right? We're a publicly traded company. And anything that didn't meet that checklist, that was in order but didn't get through all of this, what we call the firm order process, it was append. And it was such a bad word because it's like you left revenue on the table. You didn't get that revenue in the quarter. I don't hear that word that much now, but when I was there, I hated the word pins and I hated the word firm order process. I heard it, I hated it, I couldn't stand it. So I'd say, probably those three things, objectives and key results. I'm like, why can't we just call them outcomes? Pins and firm order process.
Right. Awesome. Okay. With your legendary background spanning both raw technical engineering and senior business leadership, you've likely seen many projects succeed and fail. What is the most memorable lesson that you have learned from a time when a brilliant technical idea did not align with the business reality?
Yeah, this is a good one. I worked on a project that was just ahead of its time. My last few years in software development, and we spent millions of dollars, and we never sold a single one. We spent millions of dollars and lots of years on this project. I think what I'd say is a failed project isn't a bad thing. A failed project is a bad thing once you realize it's going to be a failure and you keep at it. Learning when to say we've failed and we've learned our lessons from it, it's hard, right? Because especially there's a tendency when you put so much time, energy, effort into something that you like want to power through to make it successful. But people vote with their dollars, especially when you're talking product and business, right? We struggled to just make the technology work. Then once we got it to work, we couldn't get people to buy it. And the biggest lessons I learned is it's okay to fail. Like you come out stronger from failing. There's this concept called fail fast. You need to be able to fail fast, and you need to be able to say, okay, this didn't work, and let's move on to the next thing, right? I think it's good to have a certain amount of things that you experiment on that just don't work. I think that's fine. You don't want to spend forever on those things. You don't want to spend forever, and you don't want to spend a ton of resources and dollars on it. So yeah, I've been part of a lot of failed projects, but this one project at the time, we were doing something that is very standard today, but basically we were creating the concept of a mobile hotspot back before that was a thing. And at the time, we were trying to use the first generation of Bluetooth spec, which was extremely unstable. And like technology just wasn't ready. The idea was great, and it's common now. You got a little button on your phone that says turn it into a mobile hotspot now. But back in 2009, that was not the case. And we were trying to do that, and it just didn't work out.
Well, thank you for telling us about failures. Something that IBM happens to have in abundance is also success. What do you think separates IBM from other similar companies?
Restless reinvention. IBM, we've been around since 1911. And the only reason why we've been around is because we continuously reinvent ourselves. So we, will, just like I talked about understanding when you're at a failure point and moving on, we also understand when things are going to more of a commodity style business, and we tend to move on from things at that point. We tend to understand, hey, we're not a consumer business. We're more of a enterprise business. We're more of a B2B type of company. As soon as things start to be commoditized, our value erodes. And so we reinvent, right? Right now, we are all about hybrid cloud, AI. We have a big bet on quantum computing for the future. And, if I'm talking to the next IBM leader who's going to be standing here 10 years, it'll be something else. But just continuously reinventing, right? We were in the PC business. We sort of fathered the PC business. We fathered the server business. We ushered in the era of digital. And then, we've gone on to different things. And, sometimes just understanding where the market is at and making those hard decisions is, it's tough, but it's something we've done a good job of. So just being able to restlessly reinvent yourself as a business. And then even as we've had this discussion, as a person, you all are gonna have to restlessly reinvent yourselves 7, 8, 9, 10 times in your career, right? The fact of the matter is we are at a point in which technology is advancing at one of the fastest paces it has ever happened since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, right? I would probably argue beginning of the Industrial Revolution and back in the day when they invented the wheel, right? And I'd say right now it's probably, 1, 2, or 3 in terms of the rate and pace and change of technology. And when you have that, that means your skills, the half-life of your skills is going to diminish faster. right? When I was coming out of college, the half-life of a skill was about 15 years, 10 to 15 years. You learn something, it's good. It's 50% less valuable at 10 to 15 years. It keeps dropping. Now if you listen to researchers, they're saying half-life of a skill is 2 to 3 years, right? So that means, you learn something, it might carry you 10 years. So you're gonna have to reinvent yourself a lot. And I think accepting that is a good thing, right? For me, it hit me in the face. I didn't accept it when I was in college. I didn't even think about it. I thought I was gonna have all the skills I need for the rest of my career. When I was in engineering, the programming language I learned was Pascal. Anybody know Pascal in here? Guess what? It was obsolete by the time I did my first coding at IBM. I never wrote a line of Pascal code, right? So, that sort of hit me in the face. Also, when I started my career as an engineer, talk about restlessly reinventing yourself, I was an electrical engineer and I really liked doing system board level work. And right around that time frame, when I was in high school and in college, a lot of the engineering sort of mind share was really in a few countries: Japan, Germany, US, Canada. It was like where all the engineering powerhouses and all that type of stuff happened. And as soon as I got into engineering and doing board level work, Taiwan became this powerhouse out of nowhere. Then China. And so like the work I was doing could be done much cheaper in a different location, right? And so I saw like, boom. And so I said, I gotta reinvent myself, right? And I've got to learn other things. So I was like, I need to, software is becoming more and more popular. I gotta get into the world of computer science. And I think you're just gonna see shifts like that. And I see a lot of people, I had a lot of my peers that just got angry about it and did nothing. And I was like, I'm gonna just keep learning, I'm gonna reinvent myself. So, long answer, but I think it's, I'd be remiss if I stood in front of a group of future leaders of, our community and didn't challenge you to think about constantly reinventing yourself.
Right. So reinvention definitely seems crucial, but sometimes it's difficult to find out how exactly you should be reinventing yourself or which new skills you need to tack on because, as you said, this market changes rapidly. So how do you know which skills particularly are critical to develop at a certain time?
Well, I would say always look to sharpen all of your what I call human-centric skills, right? Like you always sharpen those. We talked about them: communications, negotiations, ability to think critically, problem solve, relationship building. Always be sharpening those, right? Like those can never be sharper. And then I think when you talk about other skills, I used to say, man, try to figure out where things are going, which is a great strategy, but you're gonna be wrong a lot, right? I'll be honest with you, my ability to predict the future, especially in technology, has been terrible, right? So I used to say oh, well, you gotta look and figure out where things are going. It's like, well, that's so hard to do. Some people can do it, and I think if you can, more power to you. What I would say is you see a new capability, you see a new topic, you don't know much about it, try to go learn it, right? And I would just say acquire as much knowledge and skills as you can. And in that way, you're more ready for however the technology landscape or the business landscape, however that moves, you're ready for it, right? That's the difference in what Tim would have told you 10 years ago to now, right? Because when I look back at it, I have been terrible at predicting technology, terrible. I've been terrible at predicting business and where it's going to go. I've gotten some things right in my career, but it's hard to do. So, what I will say is, whatever you can learn about, learn about. And I am a bit of the team in the back will tell you, I am a little bit of when there's something I don't know, like I get a little bit obsessive, and like I will spend all night reading research papers on radon. I didn't know much about radon, and I spent like a whole night reading and learning about radon just because my HVAC guy was like, "Oh, you have a house with a basement. Have you had it radon tested?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "What's radon?" And so like my mind just goes. But I won't tell you to be that obsessive. I don't think it's that healthy to be that obsessive. Like sleep is a good thing. But like when you start to take a value in, hey, I learned something new, whatever it is, then you just constantly pick it up, right? And it's not like this chore. I'm going to go learn this skill unless this thing gets, in case thing gets obsolete. Just like the exercise we did, tell yourself a different story. Hey, I'm learning this thing so that at some point it's going to be valuable to me. Maybe it's just in trivia night at the bar, but it's going to be valuable to me. And then that's a much better approach.
Right. So this is awesome advice for figuring out which skills are going to bring us future value. But let's talk about which skills you want to get rid of that don't bring you value right now. If AI took over 30% of your job tomorrow, which 30% would you happily give up?
I would say anything that's manual and repeatable. As we see AI propagate through all walks of life and all parts of business, I do believe there's going to be this curve, but and we're seeing it already. It's starting with the things that are take less ingenuity and innovation, things that are manual and repeatable. And guess what? If it's manual and repeatable, I'm probably not exercising my brain anyway, so I'd gladly hand that off to AI. And let me think about how I can be more innovative, how I can be more creative, right? One good example is Marissa in the back. We do a lot of writing, speeches, communications, et cetera. And it used to be, I have a thought and I pass it to Marissa and she come up with something and then we iterate and we work on drafts, et cetera. Now, we have some thoughts, we give it to AI, we get a first draft, we make a couple of corrections and we're done, right? And like we're moving on and we're thinking more about how do we want the session to go versus how the words are gonna be on the page and things of that nature. So like, for me at this point, that would be what I'd say. I do think there's a point in the future where, AI is going to be more like my engineering teammate. And I actually think in some levels when it comes to like coding, it already is. But even more so that when I think about like product design and architecture and things of that nature, I think that'll be very, very exciting because then it'll be like being able to have a mini brainstorming session with just you and your computer. And that's going to be fascinating.
Right. So you talked a little bit about eliminating repetition, but sometimes tradition can be very important. There's one tradition that I came aware of whenever I visited your office that I found very interesting. Tim happens to really like Mean Girls, and
Yes, I
every
do.
Wednesday you guys wear pink.
Yes, we do.
Which character from Mean Girls do you resonate with most?
Does anybody know the Mean Girls movie? Like 10 people, maybe? So my favorite character is probably Regina George, but I'm more like Caddy. And I say that because like I am a big time nerd. She was a big time nerd. When I was in high school, I wanted to be smart and cool, which is hard to do. So I really relate to her because I'm a big time nerd at heart. I'm one of the geekiest people you'll ever meet. And if you haven't seen the movie, you should watch it. I love it. It's one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time. I love Mean Girls. And I just like it because it's like this extreme take on like how we treat people. But there's a lot of truth in how we treat people underneath. And then also it's, got some really, really good humor, and it's star-studded, right? Like when you look back on who was in that, it's like, gosh, the who's who of the movie industry was in that movie. But yeah, I relate to Caddy, the big time nerd. She was a mathlete, right? The math that would definitely be me.
Awesome. Well, that's enough from me. That was awesome from you. I want to open up any questioning to the crowd. If you guys have anything, this is the time to ask.
You mentioned great communication skills. I just want to ask you, what gives off the best first impression?
What?
You mentioned communication skills. I just wanted to ask you, what gives off the best first impression?
The best first impression. I think it's situation dependent. For me, I love anybody that can make me laugh. If you can make me laugh, that is a great first impression. Now, that's hard to do. But beyond that, I would say I also love people that come across helpful, right? Somebody who's trying to help. That makes a good impression. And so I'd say also, depending on situations, somebody who comes across as thoughtful. And all these are situation dependent, right? Like, maybe I'm coming into a crisis situation and we got to figure out some things in this group of people I haven't worked with. Well, that first impression might be the person that said, hey, we didn't consider this. I have this thought about maybe what we should do. Like that makes a big impression to me because I'm like, this person is actually thinking, how do we get to the best possible outcome in the middle of a crisis? So those are some of the things. It's very situation dependent. If it's in a casual situation, like I said, if you can make me laugh, like you got me, like great first impression. And then two, just being general, respectful, professional, right? I pick on you. Across a LinkedIn email, she came across as professional and likable. I don't know how you did it. I don't know if AI wrote it for you or you did it, but like I was just like, wow. Great first impression just from the keyboard. And I said, okay, I want to help. So I think it's situation dependent, but like, just think about the basics, right? Think about the basics. And for most people, what makes a good first impression on you is sort of the same thing, right? That to me doesn't change regardless of like how many jobs you've done and climbing the corporate ladder, et cetera. Good question though.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming out. My name is Jonas Simonov, and this isn't really a professional question, but I wanted to ask like what the thing on your lapel was.
Are you familiar with the Muppets?
No.
Is anybody familiar with the Muppets? Okay, have you heard of like Kermit the Frog?
Oh yeah, okay.
That's the Muppets. Kermit the Frog, Miss Piggy. One of the characters on the Muppets was Animal, and this is Animal.
That's cool.
You can see it a little closer.
You know what? I recognize
Okay,
that one.
okay, all right. Funny thing is, I don't know when I started this, but I wear a different lapel pin every day. I started collecting lapel pins. I have like 2 big boxes full of lapel pins, but this is one of my favorites. I love Animal. There was another character that I have from the Muppets, Beaker. I don't know if you've heard of him, but yeah, I think he's funny. Anyway, you got to watch it. And if you want a good laugh, any of y'all ever heard the show called Drop the Mic? No? So Drop the Mic is a show where they bring celebrities on to do a rap battle against one another. One episode they brought in, you can Google it on YouTube, and they brought in the Muppets to rap battle against one another. So it is Beaker and Miss Piggy versus Kermit and Shrimp. And it is hilarious. So best use of 10 minutes of your life that you can ever have. Yes.
Hello, my name is Asiat So, and I'm a sophomore majoring in mind, what is the greatest weakness you see in the new generation that's entering the workforce?
The new generation, and I get why it's happened, but I would say don't work well in teams. Interpersonal skills, I think, have gone way down. And I get it, right? I get it. You all went through COVID. You all have more technology at your fingertips than we ever possibly could have dreamed of. So I understand why. But it does hurt sometimes because usually when you come in the workforce, you're working as a team, right? And somebody's got one part of it. And I see a lot of issues with people not being able to work well with one another. So I think, if you're thinking about an area as you enter the workforce in a few years, be a good teammate, right? And being a good teammate, it's just having a selfless mindset, having a curious mindset, being observant, bringing other people along and into conversations. Think about stuff like that because it goes a long way to, because in most places, you can't accomplish anything by yourself once you start working, then you're part of the team. So if you got people that can't work well in the team, then the team fails. And that's a bad place to be. Good question.
What's your favorite poker hand?
I would say I have a sentimental value for club flush.
Club flush.
Yeah.
What about like you're starting to?
Starting to?
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh. I'll probably say suited connectors.
Okay.
Yeah, suited connectors. Yeah, it's not aces, because aces will take you on an emotional roller coaster, right? You feel like you're supposed to win, somebody catches up, so no, it's not aces. Suited connectors.
I'm just curious. You were talking about like knowing how to fail fast, right? And something I hear a lot from tech professionals is like, you never want to be complacent in whatever job or role that you have. You have to keep your options open and never be afraid to say, I'll think about it, rather than just decline because you're currently in a position. What's your take on when you see signs and when you know that you should switch to another role or to another job?
Yeah, I'm a believer. I'm not a believer in, like some people will say, every 3 years you should take another job. I don't believe in that. I believe in, there's a few different ways to look at it. You start to lose your intellectual curiosity in your job, it's time to take another job. You start to gain a ton of intellectual curiosity into something else, it's time to take another job. If you are trying to accomplish something long-term in your career and you're missing certain aspects of skills and experiences, well, then you need to go get them. But I've spent 6 years in one department and I spent 2 years in one department. It all sort of depends. And I would say when I've motivated myself to go look for something else, it's because I'm trying to go get a new skill. Like I said, I was loving software development when I left, but I know I needed some business acumen and business skills. And so I was trying to go acquire a new skill so that I could keep growing as a leader. So those are the types of things you have to think about. I hate to tell people every 2 years take a new job, because you can be in a job and keep learning and keep doing well and keep progressing and keep growing and your intellectual curiosity is being stimulated. It's a great place to be. Also, what are your long-term goals? If your long-term goals is to be the CEO of a big company one day, yeah, you're probably gonna have to switch jobs fairly frequently. But if it's not, do you have to? Right? Good question.
You mentioned how important it is to always be learning and also kind of staying up to date with modern technology. So I'm curious, kind of what types of books, podcasts, maybe news outlets do you follow or have followed throughout your career that has led you to always stay up to date?
Now I follow more of business outlets because I like to think and try to understand what other leaders are thinking about. But I'd say in my past, scientific journals were great. Um, uh, Individual researchers at great institutions is something that, like, when it, I'll never forget when it got to the point where it's like, oh man, I can read what this guy at MIT did. Like when I started my career, I couldn't do that. Like that's out of reach. But like when it got to the point to where like, oh, you could read this and like read what some great mind did and figure it out. Like that, I think that's invaluable, right? So you know, it's a myriad. I mean, I always like to stay on top of local news. When I wake up in the morning, I turn on the local news. I subscribe to a couple of the local papers, the Triangle Business Journal. You know, I keep my eye, always got to keep your eye on local. And then, you know, I try to read as much as possible from all other business outlets, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, you know, you name it. And likewise, when I was, you know, doing more day-to-day scientific engineering work, it was, how can I follow some of the greatest minds in the industry? Because that's my thing. I quickly got to like, how do I compare myself to the best, and where can I get what they're doing? And I think that's a good guide for like where to follow.
You mentioned looking towards the best and looking up to people. How do you personally look up to people that you consider better than you?
How do I look up to people that I consider
Personally better than you?
personally better than me? Oh, it's very easy. One, I try to, I don't bring my own ego into it, right? So like, people's accomplishments speak for themselves, right? And that's just how I look at it. So my view is I can learn from anybody. And, you know, for example, I can go to a engineer that might be several layers lower than me in the company, but I know he's the expert in some particular topic, then okay, well then he's the best, or maybe the best I got available, and I just go to it. So like I cut ego out. It's like who's doing the best, right? And I try to view myself as I'm never doing the best, so it pushes me to like try to get to this place that I'm never gonna get to, because I'm saying to myself, you always got to keep growing, right? I'm never complacent. So for me, you know, ego doesn't come into it, and it's just a matter of, you know, who has the knowledge, who's producing great results, and that's where I want to, you know, figure it out.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
I know it might be a little contradictory since I'm in that position, but how do you format your questions to get the most out of your experiences?
You know, when I get the opportunity to be with an expert, you're right. Like, you know, that's valuable time. And I think it depends on the situation. Again, like we talked about earlier, understanding time and situation. If I have a lot of time, it's, you know, one approach where maybe I get to see how you thought through it and get to really, really probe. If I don't have a lot of time, it's like, what information do I really try to want to be able to extract? And how do I make sure I can get it out of that person in a way in which I can digest it? Because just like we talked about, just because somebody's an expert doesn't mean they're an expert at explaining. I know a lot of people that have brilliance up here, but cannot give their brilliance, they can't pass it on to others. So, you know, part of it is, you know what you want to ask, but then you think about how do you get to the process in which they figured it out. So you ask those types of questions, right? Like, what made you X? When you saw this situation, how did you respond? Right? So you can get into their mind of how they're thinking. Then you can sort of sometimes pull that information out. And then sometimes you meet some people that are like expert at something and expert at explaining it. I was lucky. That first lab I worked into, some of the senior engineers, they were expert at explaining things, right? They could make complex code sound like it was ABC. And so sometimes you just get lucky. So it's just understanding situation, understanding who you're talking to, and then tailoring your questions, appropriately. Sort of like being a good journalist. A good journalist will get the information out of anybody, regardless of how comfortable they are with the media or not, because they'll tailor how they ask the questions. Yes.
You mentioned very early on in your talk that you, sometime next week, we're moving on to a personal passion of yours, affordable education.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious, you've had a whole host of experiences at many different institutions, many different organizations, many different levels at these respective organizations, and also have a whole host of experiences that you've garnered throughout such experiences. I'm curious, why do you choose now to pursue something outside of the generic career path and explore a more personal passion? And what sort of challenges do you anticipate in translating those skills from one part of your life?
It's a great question. It's a question I've gotten a lot of. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you not to think like I think. The reason now I'm doing it is I've always had this fear. I didn't grow up with a lot of money or anything like that. So I've always had this fear, like I'm not going to have enough money, or things are going to change in that regard. I finally just got to a point to where I felt financially free, and that's what pushed me to go pursue this passion. And I wish I didn't think that way, right? Like I wish I was just, my passion, go after it, right? Because I've had I've wanted to scratch this itch for probably the past 10, 11 years. And I haven't. Now, what I have done is done it in other ways. Spent a lot of time coming back to Chapel Hill, going back to NC State. I used to be a guest lecturer at the University of Tennessee. I've done a lot of lectures here. I've done things to support Wake Tech in the past. I chaired a bond that got them $300 million. So I've given back. I'm on the board of NC State. So I've done things to sort of scratch the itch, but I didn't fully scratch the itch because, just a little fear of which is, not a good way to, think about your future. So I'll be very transparent with you and tell you that, but don't make that same mistake that I made.
I appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm studying economics and creative writing. And you said you wanted to pursue this passion of yours starting probably a decade ago. So I was just wondering what sparked your passion for education.
I think it started, part of my story I didn't tell you was my mom was an educator. My mom was a kindergarten teacher, and at the end of her career, she actually went to go